going on, buddy? I just got something to share with you about the world, though. You see, the world is tricky. The world is... We're living in a false reality, my friends. Or we very well can be. And you know, my whole thing about it is I just find it so succulent, so sweet and delicious. You know, such a great time. Call it awakening, you know, call it revelations. Call it revelations. Call it one of those things where you just... some bit of information hits you. You experience a piece of information, and your whole paradigm shifting. A paradigm is your perspective on life. You know, a lot of times we will be unconsciously just kind of operating within a paradigm. And, you know, we operate in these various paths of behaving based on a whole onslaught of various signals. You go to the gas station because on your dashboard, the little arrow points to E as opposed to F. You fill your tires because the tire thing is flashing orange. You go get your engine checked because your check engine light is on. But it's not like you actually see into these various realms of the car. You just see the signal. What I'm trying to allude to is that the various forms that we take on as we move about our day. They're not necessarily us. They're not who we are. But there are times where we can be so attached to how our body feels that based on however we posture out in the world, that is who this is who I am. You know, we start believing that we are the various suits of armor, the skin that we take on. You know, if you were to slump back You might begin to feel tired or lethargic or exhausted and drained more than physically. It might induce thoughts like, oh man, I can't do this. Or man, oh man, I don't even know, I'm going the wrong way. I don't like this. And it's not you. See, paradigm shifting knowledge, man. My whole paradigm shifted. And what this is, it's like ego dissolution, ego dissolvement. This whole thing of who you think you are or who you try to be. Falls away. I got what I got to notice today was most certainly the principle of impermanence. The concept that there is nowhere to stand. And what that means in consensus reality is I just noticed, in the first trimester of my day, out in the public eye, a lot of what my behaviors happened to be were just various, me trying to find a kind of homeostasis. Just always moving, always changing my pattern. Into a place that more or less felt safe to be as. The other day, I overheard some folks speaking, and there was this girl, she said, "We live in a simulation." And in that moment, dude, that freaked me the hell out. I was like, oh, what the hell? And today, hey, I guess I got to sit with it for a little bit, and I got to walk with it a little bit. And as I was walking, I thought about NBA 2K, my player, playing online multiplayer, being on the blacktop. And it makes me think about the video game, the animations of the video game. Like there are certain, you got, oh damn, you gotta go with crossover 3. Crossover 3 is wicked. And then the various idle animations, you'll see these digital characters perform animations that these developers, engineers, coders put into the game, and it's on some kind of like time coded system. Where every 15 seconds you don't move your analog stick, your dude he'll click his heels on the ground to to adjust how his shoe fits on his foot. Anywho, yeah, I definitely got to see a different aspect, just a different way of looking at life. That I'm a pattern for the universe to experience. That the way that I walk around the world, yeah, I'm not the first dude to do that. Hands in pockets, walking fast? Yep, that's not unique. Hands in kangaroo pockets of the hoodie, walking slow, hood up? Yeah, that's nothing new. Hands behind your back, walking like a crane? Same deal. This has been done ever since Homo sapiens have been around. And these are just body forms. These are just various patterns that your body looks like out there in the physical world. And there's something a little funny. There's something a little funny about that. Because initially, each of these various physical forms that the body can take on and move around as. This isn't like a real science or anything, but it's tricky. It's illusory at first. It's deceptive at first. Because what'll happen is the various forms that your physical body can take on will trigger different kinds of thoughts that'll float around in your mind. And so if you move your body around in such a way that or you hold your body in such a way, you participate in life in such a way that your thoughts are more hostile, judging, you're kind of in where in a way you feel like a cretin. You feel like vermin who has no dark space to hide in, and you're just under the vast illumination of life to be perceived by all, and there's no little hidey hole for you to get to. And so you're just this kind of defensive, I'm going to attack everything that is, you're just on a war path. Good news is, that's not you. That's not who you are. Good news is, that's just who you might believe yourself to be in that moment in time. And it feels real. It feels, what do you mean? What do you mean that's not me? That's totally me. It feels real. We're invested into it. For all intents and purposes, I mean, yeah, right? You feel something in the body. Oh, dude, you feel a sensation in the body, and a thought occurs in the mind, and we attach to it because why not? Why would we not? It's so easy, so natural to do such that. These are the forms. And you could think of them like notes. Of an instrument. If you'd like to. And this is something that this is a piece of insight given to me that I'm just going to pass on. That opened up the blockade for me. And that was insight into my own behavior from the perspective of one who already took that road. I was like, yeah, dude, there's a dead end over there. You know, there is definitely something about human life where we're always chasing a kind of emotional high. And when we are feeling that high, to say, you know, we're feeling good about life, nothing needs to change. It's perfect. It's great. Yes. And then comes a moment in time where we dip. And we're like, no, why? You know? And a big part of that is because we're attached to these various forms. And we think that we are them. We think that we're the note, not the instrument. And some people love the bass. Some people like the falsetto. You know, some people like the low, some people like the high. And so on the journey, I think I'll go into describing the journey along the way. You know, initially, It was the American dream. It was the spiritual American dream. You know, if I could just have the white picket fence, if I could just have the green grass yard, the family, if I could just have the security, if I could just have the solidity, if I could just have the consistency, if I could just be cool, calm, and collected, if I could just be if I could just not be the quaking mess, I will. It will be great. And so your whole motive is, I'm not going to be the quaking mess. I don't want to be the quaking mess. God forbid I become the quaking mess. And so what happens is there's so many things going on that you do that don't get put into words. It's a happening. It's coming at you in light speed, and you can only perceive it at the speed of sound, so there's always just some kind of lag between these things. And as I've dissected it, what have you, what your life becomes is you're constantly pushing things, you're pushing the experiences of life away. There's so many instances in life that you push away because, you just glance. You're always glancing. You're kind of in this low survival state of mind. You're always just kind of looking out into your environment, like, what is it that I gotta worry about? What is it that's catching my attention? Oh, okay, what is the thing to avoid? And you're constantly in this state of repulsion, pushing away all these sorts of various things that you're like, oh God, that's gonna call this kind of thing into being, and that's quaking mess related. No can do. Not gonna do that. And then at the same time, there's things that pull you into a kind of life. They pull you into a kind of path. They pull you into a kind of way of life, a kind of way of behaving. A Tao is what you can call it. They pull you into a kind of pattern of behavior, if you will. And these are the kinds of things that, we get pulled into these patterns because they're safe. Because in some realm of muscle memory, they were safe. They had good outcomes. And so we lean on those. Or we can lean on those. Now me, I don't know exactly what happened. I don't really know. It's like, can you ever really pinpoint the precise moment you fall asleep? Can you ever pinpoint with 100% accuracy the instant you shift from waking consciousness to you falling asleep, and now you're in some kind of like REM dream state. At what point is it nighttime? I have no clue. But I did hear something. And this tidbit of information was that when you no longer really, at what point is the juice just not worth the squeeze anymore? I didn't want to go about life in the kind of way that I recognized I was anymore. It became boring. It became nothing changes if nothing changes. Definition of insanity: doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. I was tired. I was tired of the things that life was showing me. And it wasn't... I noticed how insignificant the highs were. I recognized in a moment where I hit some kind of like emotional peak, where I was laughing or something was funny to me, and it wasn't even like I don't know. It wasn't all that great. Like the ingredients of what made that sort of peak experience for me wasn't even like moral or ethically good. It was like something really like immature. And that, in that moment, it was a kind of paradigm shifting thing. Because I could see my own behavior from a further, stepping back kind of perspective. I was like, oh my God, if this is the feeling that I'm like craving and looking for, and then I just had it, and it wasn't what I was. It's not even the thing. You recognize the thing that you were even looking for when you get it. It's not it. You don't even want it. You didn't even like it that much. Or maybe it just wasn't as wholesome as you thought it to be before you had it. And so the nature of the game that you want to play changes, because you no longer want to play a game that you're not interested in. You're no longer you no longer have the kind of fervor to perpetuate the kind of life that the reward part of it. In your opinion, sucks. Now. They hyped it up. They said it was golden. It's gold. You got it. Things started turning green on you. And that whole bit. It no longer becomes about what kind of form can you manifest into the world. You're no longer attached to who you are physically, how you look anymore. How other people perceive you to be. What they think you are. Who they think you are. I've learned that term to be form identity. There's various archetypes of people. The smiling, hey, how are ya, guy. The person in the car who's second in line at the light. And the second it turns green, they lay on the horn. Go! I believe I'm someone who has to be somewhere right now. I really believe that. I gotta be somewhere that I'm currently not at. Come on. Hurry up. Jesus. Criminy crickets, man. Oh, dude. And my take currently, my current take on it is, you want to be free. Of these kinds of things. And a lot happens. Initially, if you live in the West, you're part of a Western culture. It's really about two dynamic opposites. It's between fast and slow. A lot of people, I'd say the majority of people, perhaps, we're moving very fast. Urgency. Goal-oriented. Directives. Just inertia, motion, movement. Objectives, go here, do that, get this. Great, got that? Okay, get out of here. Mission protocol. Mission objective, get the thing, get out of there. Be as efficient as possible. Time. Go, get. Bring. Collect. Great. Whew. Obtained another artifact. Splendid. Lovely. Wow, wasn't that a rush? Can't wait to go participate in that one again. The whole going, getting, obtaining, obtained. Now we bring it back, and now it's obtained and it's collected, and now I gotta, if that's how I get my high. If my high comes from me going out and getting and obtaining and then having it, and then it's collected, and then I gotta go do that again. And so, if that just happens to be just consumerism, capitalistic, whatever, sure. Perhaps that's an aspect of that thing. This whole capitalistic, consumerist, things cost money, time is money. All this, but besides all that, it's, that's how people go to feel good, That's how people go and try and change their emotional state. Because in that journey of things, yeah, you do feel good at a certain point in time. You do get that oxytocin out there, being in the community, socializing, dip diving, socializing. You do get that dopamine rush or whatever from just, the cold water splash of initially finding yourself in a public atmosphere or what have you. The sort of serotonin effect you'll feel from just being around other people. Yeah, feels good. Feels good to be a human amongst other human beings. I like this. Let's do this more often. The mistake comes from the whole strategy and approach that goes into that whole thing. It's, do you ever just go somewhere to go somewhere? Go somewhere to be there, but not necessarily just, just kind of being a fly in the world. Or like a gnat flying around the world. The gnat doesn't think, yep, I'm totally gonna be flying around this path. Or maybe they do. Who knows what the hell a gnat is thinking? I don't know. But the way that I interpret a gnat or a fly flying around is they just, on a whim, who knows? Who knows what that pilot, imagine if you were a fly. You were reincarnated into the body of a fly. What would you do with flight? You'd probably just fly around, just to fly around. And so you're no longer moving at this point in time. I suppose what happens at this point in the journey is you don't like the game that you're playing anymore. And so you approach it in the opposite way of all the ways that you approached it before. Like, initially, You would avoid all these sorts of tensions and contusions that would come to your awareness. Push away all these sorts of things in life. You know, you go around the world and you see issues. You perceive things to be issues, obstacles, even. Oh, dude. If they weren't like this, or if they weren't even here during this moment, then I wouldn't be feeling this way. I wouldn't have to do this, or this kind of take on things. And what happens is, you're no longer grabbing. You know, you're no longer grasping. You know, you're no longer grabbing at the air for like oh, dude, I don't want to feel this way. I want to feel this way. And you're grabbing, I want to feel this way. Grabbing for this feeling that isn't some kind of physical solid object that you can even hold on to, but you reach for it, you yearn for it. And you no longer push away all these undesirable, unpreferable things you've deemed contaminants to your being, your essence, and whole mode of operations. You know, and instead, now, you move beyond form. Instead, your form becomes your form becomes your vehicle. Out there in the world. And it's not this kind of thing that traps you. It's no longer this thing that allures you. And instead it becomes a kind of utility object in the metaphysical world. It becomes a kind of tool for you. You know, and a tool for what? Tool for what? I think it becomes a kind of tool for finding and kind of attuning to, you know, what is most true. You know, and even more than that, you know, I'd say it's a blend of things. You know, along with it being this kind of like metal detector for truth, it becomes a you know, it becomes your compass that you navigate the world in to find the place where the eye of the hurricane is. I had an interesting experience, definitely. I sat down today in the middle of a public space, pedestrians crossing, all which ways and all sorts of directions. All these people passing by. And I let my experience in that moment, I tried to not hold on too loosely and not hold on too tightly either. I tried to just be right there in the middle of things and let my mind go where my mind would go. Let my eyes see and look at what they wanted to see and look at. And then I would just sit there. I would sit there behind this sort of happening as a witness, as an observer to what my animal, freaking human behavior, what it would be. And then I would sit there behind there like a parent. Just kind of, overseeing their untrained child. Move about in the world. And if he ever did something too crazy, I would be able to go over and be like, hey, yeah, sorry about that. He's a wild one. Kids do the damnedest things, don't they? And just kind of be that for myself. As opposed to cutting it off too early, which is something that I'm sure we've all done, and some of us still do very often. Oh man, I feel discomfort arising. Better cut it off early. Do not pursue. Fall back! Retreat! Discomfort is arising. Fall back! Immediately! Danger imminent! Get the hazmat suit. And so that was really fun. Because it was a completely novel experience. Stepping outside the comfort zone. Waiting around outside the comfort zone. Sitting outside the comfort zone. the TLDR to all of this, because I'm getting out of here. I'm totally getting out of here. I'm gonna do other things. The TLDR is, to be in the world but not of the world. Or perhaps you find yourself being in the world but not of the world. That you're not necessarily an actor, but how you feel about whatever role has manifested itself and capitulated itself into your life as you to be in that moment of things. I mean, you're holding it so lightly that it's not even a significant portion of you or how you really even feel about it. And there's a kind of spaciousness within that. There's room. There's leg room. There's elbow room. And it no longer feels like this kind of claustrophobic thrashing from one event to the next. And that you really get to experience life with fresh eyes. Because now, what happens when you initially start to feel that kind of thing that you had originally felt that sort of sensation to push away from, push off of, to reject and repel, now you're like, well, let's see, what does life look like from within the restrictions of this particular perspective? And what if my default setting wasn't just to just dislike it automatically? Because it is restrictive. And then you get to see the positive side of that coin, that restrictions aren't inherently bad. They're not necessarily bad. Picasso once did this series of of drawings where he would only draw. He would try and draw something. Or I guess there was no trying. He would draw something without lifting, and the restriction was he could only do it with one line. He could only do it without lifting the marker, the paintbrush, the pencil up off of the medium. And so it would look like just one continuous line. And that was the restriction. And the restriction has a direct effect on the outcome of the art. And when you see it, there's a kind of odd beauty to it. Even if it looks like nothing you'd really write home about. So yeah, that's it for tonight. Thank you so much for listening to this. Good night.